This episode of Southeast Iowa Today is brought to you by Griner Auto Body of Washington, Iowa, using state-of-the-art techniques and decades of experience to get your car back on the road after an accident. Car Doctor of Washington, Iowa. No matter who Frankensteined it, they can fix it, clean it, and customize it. McDonald Boneyard of Keota, Iowa, for all your farm equipment and auto recycling needs. For great food, it's your choice. Your Choice Family Restaurant of Wayland, Iowa. Open Tuesday through Sunday. Come to our cruise-ins this summer on the second Tuesday of the month, June through September. Girling Repair of Winfield, Iowa. If your mower is dead, call Fred, your Husqvarna, Aaron's, and Gravely dealer. Fred also fixes and sells snowblowers. B&B Propane and the family of jet stops. CW Tree Trimming, LLC. We're into your trees, not your wallet. Serving all of Henry County and the surrounding area. We offer a senior citizen and veteran discount. Dutch Market and Coffee Talk of Washington, Iowa. Dutch Market can handle all of your grocery needs, and they even have a conference room that you can use for free. Coffee Talk's drive-thru is open and ready to serve you coffee, energy drinks, sandwiches, baked goods, and ice cream. They all present you the award-winning Southeast Iowa Today. Here's the author of Christie's Journey, The Beat Goes On, and your host, John Bain.
Thank you, announcer Cody Roy of NewEnglandDukes.com for your golden pipes and wonderful introduction. I am still at the Henry County Courthouse because this is part 2 of the Board of Supervisors meeting, and this is dealing with the standard penalty ordinance. And of course, there'll be also in this episode, you're going to hear public opinion on open burning and all of that. And as you watch it, I know as I recorded it, I said, let's use common sense here, people.
Next on our agenda is public hearing for the standard penalty ordinance. Joe?
We need a motion to go into public hearing.
I have a motion to go into public hearing.
I'll make the motion to go into public hearing.
Is there a second?
Yeah, second.
Discussion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? No.
This is, we just added number 4. We repealed the whole section, but the section's identical to the previous section, other than number 4, that says penalties for violations of the open burning ordinance shall also be subject to reasonable FEMA costs for responding fire departments. That's just adding that language.
Where you at, Joe? Excuse me.
On the bottom of the first page of the standard penalty.
Okay. Directly there, is that under planning and zoning?
It's probably on the main page, on the home page.
It was on the main page down towards the bottom, like the first item in the blue.
I found it under public notices.
It may be put on the bottom of the page in public notices, all the way down. Keep on.
Is that all the way down?
Yeah.
Something right there? Is that what you want?
If you go up to public notices at the top of the page, there.
There it is, yep. Went right past it. Number 4 right there at the bottom of the page is that's the only change that's made, is adding number 4. That's to coincide with the open burning ordinance, and that will allow them to collect those costs in case of a violation, or at least, it allows them to ask. What's it collect, I guess you'd call it restitution, is that a good word, Walt?
Sounds good to me.
How can that apply on some ordinances and not other ordinances?
I'm sorry, I don't.
When you said we couldn't do anything like that on the wind alternate energy type thing, having a similar nature, am I looking at that correctly?
This is part of the penalties that are possible. It would go to, it would go to court, and the court would determine, if that cost is paid or not paid, or it's not something.
Is it the same on both
It is, and to your point, Chad, within the wind ordinance document, we changed some of that verbiage to relate back to code 7 here, to make sure that we're aligned on
So
dollars.
we're on the same
fees.
page for
I believe so.
everything there.
That's the only change, it's just, it would allow them to
Good point.
collect that if, you know.
So this is the document then that any offense would follow, tied
Right.
to any ordinance within the county, so
All the,
that we're
yeah,
consistent,
everything
to
inside of
Chad's
that.
point.
And like I said, all the other language is identical to the previous iteration, it's just adding number 4. So there's no change in the rest of the language.
Okay. In the public hearing, right?
So we now go for any public? Yes, Noel?
So I think we brought it up last time, asking about the FEMA costs and where that would be available. So it states what they're subject to, but how is that found, or is there somewhere that needs to be referenced in a county document? Like, it states it here, but that doesn't really outline what that means. You see what I'm saying? We talked about it last time, so I wasn't sure if that was somehow gonna be added or referenced.
FEMA costs depend on the situation.
But it doesn't state what that documentation is, like,
Is there a book that says FEMA guidelines?
Yeah, I usually have to Google FEMA rates, and then the PDF pulls up, and, yeah, you don't want me to print it, because I do kill
Right.
several trees.
I'm just curious, cause everywhere else where it states what a penalty is, then it references where that is found, like, you know, we know to go to Iowa code, like in number 3, it states the code and stuff, so, I just wasn't sure if it needed to be more specific. Cause most other places where you're referencing something like this, it's more specific, so is there like a section of the FEMA documentation, or you just see what I'm
It's all
saying?
the way through it, it's,
Okay,
you know, the fire truck might be in section 1, and the hose may be in section 5, and
Okay.
personnel may be section 2,
it
so.
just seems a bit ambiguous to me, but maybe that's just cause I'm not familiar with the document.
We use it during disasters with public works and secondary roads and sheriff's department and everybody else, so.
So it's not it's not damages, it's reimbursement rates. So like if a tandem truck has to be used to do repairs on something, then we charge whatever that rate is. So if our guys do 8 hours of driving a dump truck to repair a shoulder, that's the rate that we're talking about. So they're just like equipment rates, there's some standard rates, and I know from the roads, I don't know on this aspect, but those equipments are what we have to use those rates, not our own rates. We can't make up our own rates.
So should there be more language here, because this makes it sound, it says penalties for violation of the open burning ordinance shall also be subject to reasonable FEMA costs. That makes it sound like FEMA has penalties for violation to me. Like, should it say reimbursement for things, you know, like reimbursement for items burned up? That's not the word you would use, but you see my
But-
point?
And it could be just be used. And to Jake's point, his tandem truck is worth X number of dollars per hour and whatnot. But if we add a bucket to the back of his tandem truck, that goes into another category, and it's worth a different rate than just a tandem truck, because now it has an apparatus on it.
So it's not only the use of the stuff by the fire departments, but it could potentially also be anything that was lost, correct? Like if it burned a fire truck up or equipment, some other.
That's not under FEMA rates. If it burns up a fire truck, that's the fire department, you know, going after replacement of the fire truck because it burned it up. The FEMA rates is the use of that equipment. So
Oh, okay.
to
So
Bob Beechek's point last time with the utilities, if the utilities had to come out and shut off power because of this fire, then we can request whatever vehicle they brought out, their equipment as well, it's not just the fire department, it's other assets as well.
So
But
maybe
in
this
the
one,
same respect, New London Utilities has their set rates. We don't go by the FEMA rates.
No, but in this point, I think you would wanna go by FEMA rates,
so the way you explain it makes me understand it better. I think this one sentence is not maybe thorough enough to make it understood. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. Cause this makes it sound like it's a penalty. You explaining it that way, it makes way more sense. So is there any couple more sentences that could be added that would make it understood that it was?
Appropriate departments.
Like resources and man hours and, I mean, do you get you man hours and stuff too? Yeah, so I mean, resources, equipment and man hours utilized or something?
Kim, you had a thought? Get your finger up.
I have a thought, yeah. I was wondering, what is the difference between the FEMA cost and the local cost? I mean, is that a big difference, is it a small difference?
It sounds like a big difference to me, right? Between Bob's and
It
Walt's
could be.
conversation.
It could be. Jake, you've used them for your secondary roads guys, so.
I wouldn't worry so much about like which is more or less. I think the key is it's an index price. So like when you're talking about what's the new rate gonna be, it's a tangible thing that everybody can go to. That's, I think that's why you're utilizing FEMA. I mean, it's outside my wheelhouse a little bit, but for when FEMA comes in, it's all about standardizing how we get reimbursed. What they don't want us to do is say, well, that piece of equipment was $1,000 an hour, but according to their charts, it's $100 an hour. So they don't want you inflating your costs. They say you go to these established rates that are across the board. And that's really the kicker on this, is that you're using something that's already indexed and updated annually versus, okay, this might get used one time in 5 years, and then you're looking at whatever, if you have a rate established in there, that may be outdated. This just lets you be indexed to whatever it is. And there is a chance it could be less than what you're gonna get reimbursed, but I would say in general, it does cover fringe benefits. It covers all aspects of whatever's going on.
This is just, there's no vote to change anything today.
So, Joe, with what you've heard from conversation, sounds like maybe we should add a little more definition to the sentence 4. That's a pretty generic statement. I think we wanna be specific, but it goes back to the conversation here, saying that we need to understand what reasonable costs are. So that goes back to reimbursement of, say it again, Walt?
Equipment, personnel, and or all resources, but.
I guess you could say subject to reasonable FEMA cost per whatever this manual is. I don't have any real experience with it, but I suppose there's a specific manual, I guess you could reference a specific manual.
So wouldn't there be a general idea within the fire departments, I mean, to do budgets and to kind of do projections? What it costs to, a call comes in and you're gonna send out a fire engine, of what that cost is to accumulate the people, that there would be a price connected to that, sending out a fire engine or sending out the first responders or something like that.
An itemized cost of what it, like an ambulance can give you an itemized bill of exactly what they've used per call.
Well, I guess in my thinking, a department would already have to have that kind of information in order to plan for budgets, and I thought that's kind of what the fire or the open burning ordinance was there to address, is so that there's not these costs of engines being sent out unnecessarily. So there, in my mind, then there already has to be they're saying the cost is adding up too much, that we need to make some changes to the open burning, or create an open burning in order to address trying to minimize those costs.
I think there'd be so many variables on each and every fire, there'd be so many variables there that,
Right, it would be,
you know,
that they're,
how many staff there, how many volunteers are you requiring to be there?
see, and I don't understand how you would project a budget, cause you don't know how many calls you're gonna receive during that period of time.
Well, I think one thing that you have to think about on this is all of our fire departments are volunteers. So the firefighters don't get paid for the call. They're volunteers. They're volunteering their time. They're leaving their families, their jobs to go get on a fire truck and not get paid to go to a call.
I understand.
So what we're trying to do is keep it from, to my example, a few weeks, you have to go out 3 times to the same location in a weekend, that now they're being pulled away from their families, they're being pulled away from everything. And a lot of the departments are getting short-staffed because a lot of the departments are going, the firefighters are going, this isn't worth my time. I mean, they want to volunteer, they want to help, but if I'm gonna be pulled away from my family 3 times in one weekend, I'm not gonna show up, or I'm not gonna do it. And so this is, what we're trying to do is minimize how many times they get called out. They don't budget, when they don't budget for 18 people being called out. They may budget for the fuel. Last year we spent X number of dollars on fuel, so this is our budget for this year for the fuel. But it's not that we're budgeting for the firefighters and that kind of stuff. If we gotta replace equipment this year, the fire suits and stuff, then they budget for that, but they don't budget for each call. Like maybe the PD does, or the SO, because they're volunteers, so they don't have that. It's not, I understand what you're saying, but it's not as simple as just saying, let's figure out a budget, how much it's gonna cost for us to go out each time we go out.
Yeah.
It's more difficult than that.
It's more of a time budget.
Basically, essentially what you're trying to institute is make the penalty so severe that you're going to have people afraid to call the fire department, or you're using the penalties to enforce an ordinance, kind of micromanaging a little bit. We all have accidents once in a while, I understand. We got a neighbor out there that, I think he brings stuff home from work and burns it. It's almost guaranteed every week. But I'm afraid if you're starting to institute penalties instead of common sense, it's going a little too far.
And I think that's kind of, not to put word, this goes back to me, to the open burning ordinance. And what I thought I understood of the reason for it was to make people aware, more of an awareness kind of thing, and asking people please to call in before you're going to burn, so that can be noted, so if somebody else makes a call for your property because there's burning going on, that they know that you've already called in, and yes, you understand there's a burning, so they're not gonna be sending out somebody to that location. And I guess in my opinion, after reading through the burning ordinance again, I like the idea, and I think that the most of the community would be behind this, is working in cooperation with the county, like maybe starting a pilot program or something like this, and saying that this is more of a policy type change that we see that would be beneficial to the county to cut back on sending out engines or personnel to a fire that's already been called in, or is not a danger to the rest of the community. And I guess that's the way I would like to see that. I don't know the technicalities of calling something an ordinance or a policy or a pilot program or something like that. So people have time to, you know, I mean, cause this is a change of behavior. I mean, if I have a pile of sticks that I wanna burn, we've cleaned up, you know, if conditions are right, we go out and burn them up. But this would be, okay, before we do that, to call in and say, okay, we're gonna burn a brush pile. And I think that that's where things are supposed to, the intention was supposed to be geared at, not to set up basically a base for which if you don't do it, you're penalized. And the penalties are very vague. I mean,
There are certain times you have.
Mark, it's kinda like I said a couple weeks ago, you can't legislate morality, knowledge, integrity. You gotta have no common sense.
What, one moment please. Well, this was brought to us, you brought it to us by the fire chiefs, correct?
Correct.
Wanting something to help protect them during the red flag ordinance, ban, right?
That's how it started.
This is, so in some ways, we're mixing up a couple different things here. And so, I don't know how we're gonna sort this out exactly, but we need something during the red flag situation, that there should be no burning whatsoever. So.
and I think I would understand that if you just said, okay, during these certain times, you just don't burn. I mean, that's what the ordinance is.
Just a reminder, Mr. Chairman, right now, we're in public hearing on the penalty.
Penalty, but I wanted to make sure we had some clarification here, please, of why we're having this.
Mhm.
So that was it, so.
I think, yeah, to Mark's point, we have some questions for you in reference to the burn ordinance itself, so
Yes.
we'll get to that.
We'll
Yeah,
get to
we'll
that in a
get to that.
But if everyone used common sense,
Wouldn't need this.
okay, we wouldn't need this, the penalty section. But if we don't put some penalty to it, cause we ask people for the 15 years I've been in this office, hey, if you're gonna burn, please call in and let us know you're gonna burn. Please do that, please do that. Probably count on one hand how many people do that a year, okay? So if we don't have some stick to the ordinance, we're just spinning our wheels. We might as well take this and throw it away, because you're gonna have the same people just burning just because, if I get caught, what's gonna happen to me? They're gonna put the fire out, slap my hand, go back to the fire station, I'll light it back up whenever they leave, and I'll do it again. There has to be some penalty for the violation, and if you read the thing, it's not a lot of times the first time. You know, the incident commander and the law enforcement has the right to talk to them, educate them, and whatnot the first time. But it's the second, third, fourth time you go out to the same place. We gotta have some stick to the action. If not, it's just spinning our wheels.
So to the point of our legal counsel, we are talking about the penalty, we will be talking about the burn ordinance after this. Melody,
Yep, so I'm kind of curious, so in this ordinance, it states that it's a county infraction. However, in other parts of the ordinance, such as, the zoning ordinance, I pulled that up, it's in 6.2.21.1. It says any person who violates any provision of this ordinance commits a civil misdemeanor and shall be subject to the imposition of a criminal penalty or other relief. And it does mention Title I, Chapter 7, but I was just curious as to why there's different, terminology. Should that be county infraction, like this one is stating, or why are they different? And I think that was kind of what Chad was asking too. So if you violate the zoning ordinance, you're subject to a misdemeanor, but in the fire ordinance or the burning ordinance, you're subject to a county infraction. Is that just a terminology difference?
Are you referring to the penalty section?
Yes.
Okay, and it says either simple misdemeanor or other relief. The simple misdemeanor would be a criminal charge. And then other relief is if we just went with a civil infraction.
Okay, so if you
So
violate
there's
the
the two
zoning
different-
ordinance, you could potentially have criminal and civil, but if you violate the burning ordinance, you have civil?
It depends how we treat it. That's, with some of these things, we have to leave the language so that we have options when we get there. This goes back to all of the public hearing part on the penalties. When we say the FEMA cost, basically this is just putting them on notice that it could be more than just the, well, I forget what our standard penalty was. That we also could come after you for this. And so it's basically just put them on notice. Each case is gonna be treated
So
individually.
that's kind of what number 2 in this says, the alternative relief then.
Yes.
I was just curious as to why they were treated differently.
Reland?
Witness sent 1,900 Iowa soldiers to Iraq and Syria to protect and defend freedom. We have a right to be stupid. It could be genetics, and Dr. Foskey just hasn't found a vaccine yet. Every day, good people, including our county road department, have unintentional boo-boos. That's why we fund emergency services. We don't need any more new laws until we have a county attorney that prosecutes violations. Noxious weeds drive in
Mr. Chairman, what does
CRPA.
this comment have to do with
We're
the?
talking about our penalty here.
I'm getting there.
Well, please get there then.
What?
Please get there.
Okay. Burning CRP acres is an effective way to control noxious weeds, no hazardous chemicals, no diesel fuel to pollute the atmosphere. Uncontrolled noxious weeds can spread to county right-of-ways and public lands, creating extra work for county workers, extra expense for taxpayers. Take a drive and look. My personal experience, I had a burn in mid-March. I called in. Dispatcher asked me if I needed help. I said, no, it's just small. He said, call back if you need help, and I did. I had a problem, and I called back. The fire got in the fence row with corn shucks, and there's no stopping it. 2 people from Wayland came and helped me, and then some came from Mount Pleasant after the fire was controlled. And I asked the Mount Pleasant guys, I said, what I owe you? There's nothing, you pay taxes. And I did make a donation to both fire departments. Okay, any burn ordinance should require fence rows be clear of corn shucks and the wind not be allowed to shift. This year was an exceptional year for burning CRP acres. And the Wyoming Fire Department said they had a controlled burn, got away from them, and this ordinance is flirting with communism. I hope you know what communism is, but if we need rules to protect the public from a few people that do stupid things, then I suggest this ordinance. Any public official or employee that uses their position or county resources to personally enrich themselves shall hang by the neck until dead.
Thank you. Any other comments on the public hearing on our penalty ordinance? Jim?
I don't know how to say this. Is it possible to work on the open burning ordinance before this one? Because I guess part of my thing is all the penalties. And there's for somebody who for all their life can go out and burn their brush pile, and if they miss this part and the fire engine comes out, then is this thousands upon thousands of dollars that they're going to be assessed? I wouldn't be for that because there's ordinance I don't know. I didn't know that you should call the fire department first. I mean, I've lived here all my life. My parents would send me out to oversee, So is that possible to deal with the burn ordinance before we come, since this is attached to the burn ordinance?
First of all, this is just a public hearing, so we'll make no decisions at all about this today, okay?
Okay.
All right, so clarify that portion,
Okay.
all right? So we're just taking public input on what the ordinance is, and what we should be considering. Okay? So we will take up the other after this, after we will make, once we get out of public hearing, that's all we'll be doing. Okay? Anybody else on Bob?
Just a short one here. Actually, we're trying to get this in effect basically when it's red flag warning type.
It's for any time, but, there is a section in here about the red flag warning. So
Okay.
when red flag warning, there will be a burn ban.
Yeah, if this was to take effect during a red flag warning, I could see something like that. So, any other time, accidents do happen. Common sense. Gotta use it.
Okay, anything else? Any other comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion to go out of public hearing.
I'll make a motion.
Is there a second? All in favor, say aye. Aye, we're now out of public hearing. We will be taking this up at a later date. As far as
First reading.
First reading.
Whenever you want to.
whatever else, I mean, by taking that up later, have a reading on it.
I've got lots of notes that we can.
We can go on from there, okay? Everybody understand what we're up to? Okay. Thank you all for the input on the public hearing portion.
I hope you're enjoying this podcast episode, and if so, make sure to give it a like and follow and subscribe. It's free.
Now we're going to move on to the first reading of the open burning ordinance. Okay. On our open burning ordinance, this is the first reading. Is there any changes that anybody would like to see here?
Yeah.
Oh, I did, those couple of changes we talked about are in there in red.
Okay.
We can discuss those.
Can you go to the article there, Steve, and we'll show what we talked about? Article 4.
My finger clicks. Article 4, notification.
The only change we've made there is basically just a short change of language that would allow us to put this for an online notification if we wanted to do it online also. There's a possibility we can set up a notification through Beacon, so you can just go on to Beacon and make your notification for the fire for the Beacon permit session. And we just changed a little bit of language just that would allow for a phone call or online or whatever else you may prescribe. Just really make it as easy as possible for people to make that notification.
Okay,
Okay,
that was a good change.
everybody understand that? Okay, then we'll go on to exemptions, Article 8.
I gotta raise my hand here, sir.
Yeah, that's fine.
Can we go back to Article 2, the purpose?
Okay.
You know, I'm not claiming to be a wordsmith or anything of that nature, but if we changed a couple words there, as an example, the purpose of this ordinance is to establish requirements for certain types of burning situations within Henry County. Notification is required as a courtesy to avoid the local fire departments and emergency personnel from being called out mistakenly at the report of a controlled burn. Notification is required to assist local fire departments and emergency personnel in responding to those burning situations in case of emergency. In addition, I mean, those open burn, controlled burn, all the, let's just call it what it is, a fire. And then we can go down later in the definitions and we can describe what those, definitions, brush pile burns, are any fires set for the purpose of burning wood, tree limbs, leaves, grass clippings, yard clippings, branches. A burn barrel, that kind of talks about it. A controlled or prescribed burn is a fire set intentionally for purposes to manage, forest management, prairie maintenance, land clearing operations, where reasonable measures have been taken to prevent unintentional spread of the, rather than spread of the burn. How about, let's just call it spread of the fire, you know? Open burning means any fire of combustible materials where the material is not contained, da-da-da-da-da. You know, that's just my idea. I mean, a fire is a fire is a fire. Everybody knows what that fire is, then we could break it down and, yeah, I know what a controlled burn is. I had some fire service training and whatnot. I know what that is, but for the John Q. public to read what's the definitions and things like that, let's just call it a fire. I don't know, just a thought.
Yeah, that kind of comes up to where we were headed here on Article 8 with exemption that we talked about. I think the concern we have obviously is when we go back to burns in general, and this is really gets back to some of the conversation we had a few minutes ago on the other subject, and we were getting carried across here to where we're at with the open burn ban. So the concern here is like item 5, number 5 here, for example. And Joe has changed this a little bit. There's a new item in here as compared to what's online. But it says brush pile burns not to exceed to be determined square feet. And so I think the concern, obviously, to your point, Chad, a fire is a fire, but some of these are controlled burns that we use for CRP. Some of these are burn piles that are out in somebody's yard.
I think
So
burn connotes that it was an intentional fire. Or if you just say fire, that covers unintentional fires.
as well as
So, I think that's why we're using the language.
So a
here.
burn means intentional fire?
It has that connotation, yes.
I don't,
that kind of helps understand that.
a control burn is an intentional burn.
The burn is again.
Well, a burn is intentional, but sometimes they get out of control. It's not a controlled burn. If I just went out and started a pile of wood on fire in my yard, but I paid no attention to it, that's a burn. It's not a controlled burn.
Right.
So again, I intentionally started a fire.
So again, one of our concerns that we
And
expressed.
just, if I could, one more thing. If you're gonna be making these substantive changes, I'd recommend you do a motion to continue this first reading and make those changes before we
Okay.
go on.
Sounds good.
Well, I make a motion that we continue this reading because we do have a couple of changes that we'd like to make that are substantial.
So this number 5, we have added because of the discussion, I brought up to them, like myself. A few weeks ago, it was a wet morning, I burned a bunch of paper sacks that seed corn came in. And I would hate to have called in a 5-minute burn. So that's why we're talking about maybe have a square footage type thing on it. And it's just a part of our discussion. So, yes, we're trying to regulate common sense, but we can't. What amounts to, but we still have to have something in here saying if you aren't using common sense, we need to take care of it. So, on any burn that I have that I know that could eat, where I even burnt this was right by the well, so I have that garden ready to go. So, I'm looking at this as to help our fire department more than anything, and people getting unneeded calls. I'll use an example. One time we were combining beans. Fire department got called out. because the gentleman working with me was on the fire department. I was working by myself, came back rather shortly. Grain bin was on fire. Now, it was dust coming out of the grain bin from unloading it. Someone called in, it was smoke. No, it was dust. So this is the type of thing I'm trying to work with.
I think from an enforcement, I've been through a lot of ordinances. What this is doing, this specifically states, if you burn during red flag or burn ban, this is what's gonna happen to you. These are the possible penalties, period. Other than that, it says if you're doing a prescribed burn, you're burning off a field, doing a structure fire, you're burning a structure, or you're doing a brush pile, and say we change this to exceed X number of square feet, if you go beyond that square footage, those things you need to call in and contact dispatch and say, I'm doing this. Beyond that, you don't have to do anything. If you do what you're supposed to do, I don't see any of these penalties coming in, you know, the wind comes up out of nowhere and blows something around. You've done everything you called in, accidents happen, I don't think penalties are going to apply. But if you don't call in, you do these things, and you cause a problem, penalties are gonna kick in because, you know, you didn't do what you were supposed to do. And I think that's how this is laid out. It's not there to penalize every fire that goes on, every accident that happens. It's if you don't follow the rules, these are the possible ramifications for not following the rules. And I think, you know, if we change that square footage, like, there are lots of fires that go on, you know, without much leaves or burn them, nobody, I don't think dispatch wants to hear about that. And I think that change will take care of that. But, you know, if you're out there and you've got something, you know, 100 feet by 100 feet, and it's 30 feet tall, that's probably, you know, a brush pile we wanna call in and talk about. So I think hopefully that kind of clears it out from an enforcement standpoint. I don't think we're looking to go after everybody that has an accident on fire. It's like, you know, not following the rules are gonna be a problem.
And I think that's where this comes into with the exemptions that you just talked about. So again, that's a pretty substantial change, so we'll make those changes before we go into a first reading. You good with that, Mark?
I'm very good with that.
Chad?
You have a motion?
We do have a
And
motion.
Motion's already been
you make
made,
the
I'll
motion
second.
that we,
I did make a motion.
how's the motion stated, sir?
I made the motion, I stated in the motion that I would like to delay or postpone discussion on the open burn ordinance until after these substantial changes have been made. You were in agreement.
We were a second. Any other discussion? Other than we'll have to figure out some of these changes.
Right.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So there we'll need to have a work session, or bring it up at another time to do this. All right? Is that understandable? If you do?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, we'll move on. Subcommittee reports. Any subcommittee?
I haven't had no subcommittees this week.
I missed the crime commission, but I was in touch with the director up there. She had a couple housekeeping type things she wanted to run past the board, involving time off with some of her employees. It really, not a big issue at all, so that was.
You had none? I had community action in Southeast Iowa. Things on our agenda was looking to purchase a new building for the Head Start program in Fort Madison. It's in negotiations and see what happens, because the existing structure is no longer fitting our needs whatsoever and it's not in the best condition. The other thing is we also did our annual review of our executive director. We filed that and sent to our chairman, and she will be giving it out to our executive director. We had some, as always, budget amendment changes. As the federal government gives us some more money, whatever it might be, we have to have an amendment to change the budget. So you never know what's gonna happen to you. it was a hard, I've said this numerous times, it was the hardest thing for me as a supervisor to approve a budget and then all of a sudden we change it again. And knowing that it's gonna change, why even do it? So you have to do it according to the federal law. So that was, that meeting, and it was just a good meeting, so. Now time for public comments.
Real quick, you know, your ordinance doesn't say anything about cooking meth. And we had no, I'm serious.
I know, but.
We had an incident this spring, or earlier, where this guy was cooking meth and burnt the building down. Fire department came out. Yeah. I don't think that was unintentional. I don't know, but anyhow.
Understood. Melanie?
It's been a while since I've brought up the, videoing public meetings, as I've had opportunity to attend meetings in other counties, where they video their meetings and have them live on YouTube. They also have the opportunity for public comment. Des Moines County actually states a phone number, and then, where people could call in during the meeting, and then they also can, participate live through, the link on YouTube. And then also looking at the Henry County Watchman page, most of our videos of these meetings have been receiving 50 to 300 views. So that tells me that there's a need to get that done at the county level versus myself, or thank God for John Bain today. He's holding the camera. So anyway, I know it's gonna involve a move upstairs and, you know, the addition of a few technology pieces. I appreciate that you're showing us stuff up here. The other piece of that is, I've noticed in Des Moines County as well that they have a board packet available, along with the agenda prior to the meeting. There's even the personnel things, and so if you haven't checked that out, I would encourage you to look at that. So the public can pull up what's gonna be discussed there as well. So I feel like we're in that day and age where it's very important, and I think we've shown the need for it. So I would ask that you guys would take that up very soon. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Anybody else? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. We have a motion, we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. We are adjourned.
The word common sense was used a lot in this segment, in this podcast episode, and for obvious reasons. Thank you to the Board of Supervisors of Henry County. Thanks to the public that was here today and made comments. And thank you for watching. I also want to thank my sponsors, Griner Auto Body, Car Doctor, McDonald Boneyard, Your Choice Family Restaurant, Girling Repair, B&B Propane and the family of Jet Stops, CW Tree Trimming, LLC, Dutch Market, and Coffee Talk. I'm your host, John Bain. Stay friendly, Southeast Iowa.